Elon Musk thinks robotics and AI is the future with no work. What might be the moral and ethical implications of that future? Well, stay tuned because that's exactly what we're going to be discussing next. Hello, and welcome to the Chaplain's Corner After Hours, a place to discuss stories the mainstream media ignores that can actually impact our Christian walk and our spiritual journey. Chaplain Warren and Chaplain Nan are your hosts, and we're glad to have you with us. Hello, and welcome back to the Chaplain's Corner After Hours. It is good to have you with us again. In our last episode, we discussed a presentation made by Elon Musk at the U.S. Saudi Investment Forum 2025, where he expressed the opinion that work in the future could become optional. And so we discussed the economic implications of that type of future in that episode, and we'll put a link to that episode in our show notes today. And we have a video clip from that conference, so let's go ahead and play it right now as we did in our last episode.
Where will things end up? Long term, I don't know what long term is. Maybe it's 10, 20 years, something like that. Maybe that's long term. My prediction is that work will be optional. Optional. So
We'll take that.
yeah, I mean it'll be like playing sports or a video game or something like that. If you want to work, in the same way like you can go to the store and just buy some vegetables, or you could grow vegetables in your backyard. It's much harder to grow vegetables in your backyard, but some people still do it because they like growing vegetables. That will be what work is like, optional. It's kind of interesting. And my guess is, if you go out long enough, assuming there's a continued improvement in AI and robotics, which this seems likely, the money will stop being relevant at some point in the future. Currency becomes irrelevant. But AI and humanoid robots will actually eliminate poverty. And Tesla won't be the only one that makes them. I think Tesla will pioneer this, but there will be many other companies that make humanoid robots. But there's only basically one way to make everyone wealthy, and that is AI and robotics.
The key points he makes in the video are, first of all, robots will do all the work. Work will be optional for humans. Money will stop being relevant. Robots and AI will eliminate poverty, and robots and AI will make everyone wealthy. Now, as we mentioned before, those are some pretty sky in the pie outlandish claims for AI and robotics, and what he's really basically describing is some kind of a utopian future. And I think we all know that utopian schemes and utopian futures have been pursued before, and they usually don't end up very well. So we're doing a three-part series of podcasts on this prediction that Elon Musk has made. Our last episode was about the economic implications of such a scheme. Today we're going to be talking about the moral and ethical implications of such a scheme. And then in our next episode, we'll talk about religious and spiritual implications if such a future were to come to pass. And so today it's moral and ethical implications. And to me, this is a more difficult subject than our last episode about the economic implications, because it's really kind of hard to get your hands on just what the moral and ethical issues are going to be. But we're going to give it a try, and we'll bring up some issues, And we'll try to grade these issues. Are they either a positive type of thing or a negative type of thing or somewhere in the middle? So let's just jump right in and get started on that. The first implication is one that we would call negative, and that's the fact that the prediction is that we're going to be liberated from the toil of work, from the end of exploitation of labor and all of that. And this is it versus the risk of aimlessness. What are people going to do if they don't have work? After all, the old saying is that idle hands are the devil's workshop. And that just seems to be a future that's almost asking for trouble. Now, another implication of this future that Elon sees is a potential increase for inequality, actually. What if all of the AI benefits concentrate to the upper levels of society, or the elites as we might call them, and causes an erosion of social structures that are tied to labor? I mean, we often find our meaning in life partly through the labor that we do. Now, a positive potential implication would be absolutely the freedom from exploitation, the freedom from wage slavery, where people are often stuck in meaningless jobs, and the possibility of allowing people to pursue work based on their passion and not necessarily their necessity to earn a living. But that brings up the question, what kind of work would that be? What would people actually be doing? It sounds nice, but what would people actually be doing? And a possible answer to that question is, well, we're going to have to redefine what purpose is, what fulfillment is. Can fulfillment shift from paid labor to self-directed activities like painting, music, learning, community service, personal growth, fostering new forms of meaning? Do any ideas come to mind, Chaplain Nan, on that?
My head's kind of spinning a little bit because it, as in the old Tom Cruise movie, Go Back Up, you had me at moral ethical. So I was wondering if you could maybe say a little bit more about what's the difference, what is moral, ethical topics, conversation, what is that versus spiritual or religious?
Well, moral activity is activity that's, let's say, inherently good. Mm-hmm. And we all have within us kind of a moral compass, and we tend to know whether we're doing good or whether we're doing bad. It's just kind of written in our subconscious. And of course, in Scripture, God tells us that His laws are written in our hearts. And I think those two things are talking about the same thing. Ethical behavior maybe is talking more about honesty and integrity. If our behavior is ethical, it's basically honest. It has integrity. In other words, what we say and what we do are the same things. We don't say one thing and then do another, which is kind of unethical type of behavior. And so in the context of this prediction that Elon Musk is making about the future, it gets down to a question of, is our morals, our activities, and our ethics, our integrity, are they going to be for good, or are they going to be for bad, I guess, is just a kind of a broad way to say it.
Okay. So after I wondered about that, thank you for giving us a brief definition or a little bit of an explanation of that. I was wondering, and maybe I said it in the previous podcast, I don't recall, but I wish so badly that we were not such a little mustard seed podcast that we could, I would love to ask Elon Musk himself, because every time he speaks, it's with great wisdom and way, way, way above my pay grade. But I wonder so much what he would say about what we're talking about if he did not have the calculation of his business, if he did not have the calculation of his industry, if he did not have the calculation of whatever he's thinking, how he's thinking about reaching his goal to have a colony on Mars. And if he was just straight up talking about it, but that it had nothing to do with how it affects him and his goals and his money and his industries and all that. And I would just love to know what's in that big brain of his, devoid of his own self-interest. Maybe I think he's the kind of person who's so brilliant he could actually do that, but I don't think he does, because everything he does, he's very self-directed. So anyhow, I was wondering what he would say about ethics and morality, which for some of us might be different than what we consider moral or ethical.
Well, and that's actually a great point right there. Who defines what the proper morals and let me say this differently. Who defines what the proper moral and ethical positions are, say, in a future where there's no work? I mean, we're talking about that future state is completely and totally different than anything that mankind as a whole has experienced. We can see glimpses of it in maybe the very wealthy who have reached a point where they don't have to work, and so they just do things that maybe are internally fulfilling or something like that. And you see a diversity of outcomes. Some people who live in that kind of a world don't really accomplish much, or actually slide into addiction, into other behaviors, trying to escape their lack of purpose in life. Whereas other people just absolutely flourish under those conditions and actually go on to do great works and things like that. So there's no there's no uniformity about what people are going to do in that kind of a world. So I think I think that's maybe part of why this topic is, for me, it's just so difficult to wrestle with, because there's just not a one-size-fits-all solution. It to Elon Musk and other kind of utopian thinkers, maybe they can visualize that one-sized solution and all the good stuff. But when you try to put it into practice, you run into fallen human nature, and we inevitably find any number of ways to muddy up the situation.
So you make a great point about the two different kinds of, outcomes that we know of. And one of the bigger things is we've never, ever really, plenty of different ideologies have feigned to or promised such a utopian society. But even when there was glimpses in history of times where things were just, nobody had to do anything because everybody was so wonderfully well off, there was always a human being providing what they needed. But this is the first time where how I understand his proposition is that there will be no human beings doing the providing. It will be provided to all human beings across the spectrum so that all people will be clothed, fed, dressed very nicely, so that then it brought me to my second thought, because at first I thought, well, we have good examples in our today contemporarily of what it looks like when there's nothing to do and there's no work and there's no need to work because you're being taken care of. So you might not be rich, as what we call rich today, but you have no needs. Everything's provided for you. And so there's two weird thoughts I had. One was, well, all you have to do is look at, like, you wonder what it's like when people retire. There's nothing to do. And like you very well said, they either have some people that make good use of that free time, if you will, to do something they want to do. And then a lot of people really suffer and digress because they don't have anything to do. And then my other example, and that's kind of a nice, things always kind of work out example, but the flip is, all you have to do is look at all the homeless in California, Oregon, and especially in Seattle, all the people, young people with literally nothing to do. What are they doing? They are wired to do something. And what it looks like they're doing is horribleness of escape.
Yeah.
Horribleness of escape.
Exactly.
Now, would they do better if they still had, like the little mini houses and shelters, and they have food, and they didn't have to live so squalidly in an animalistic way? I don't know, but it just seems like that must be in the same way we need oxygen. We need we're made physically to move with energy, and you probably know you could talk maybe next time about the energy, like the science based of how we're wired, that we not wired to just mold and just sit, as I do sometimes when I watch too much TV. But anyhow, so I'm kind of jumping around, but anyhow, so I thought of people when they retire, what they go through. That might be, something to look at to try and figure it out. And then what happens when societies are completely, there's nothing, but their needs are being met. I think that's the key thing, is there's a lot of times in history, as we currently have, where there is nothing to do, there's no work, or what we call work, but where everybody's needs are taken care of, so there's not a necessity to work for pay. Well, what does that look like? And that's so weird. So I just wondered, what would Elon Musk do if he was put in that society? Because he would not need to work. And he's a workaholic. And he talks about, the people he hires and everything, they better be hard workers and spend 80 hours a week and all, in other words, he places very high value on work. And Donald Trump, same thing. High energy guy, what would they do?
Oh, exactly.
He can only play so many rounds of golf and then he's one and done. So anyhow, just my brain's kind of popping off in different places, but there's so much to it. And before it's implemented, which always happens when there's a lot of money and success and all, now to me, that's another whole moral, ethical thing, is this being shoved down humanity's throat by probably less than 100 high-level individuals on the planet? We have billions of people, and probably less than 100 people are going to be responsible for implementing what we just described.
Well, that's exactly the same thing.
Without thinking about, without having it's kind of like you and I talk about this a lot. Don't go into war without already knowing the outcome and having a plan, right? And this is kind of that. It's like a big, huge discovery, and we'll figure it out as we go along. And that's part of human nature, and humanity kind of does that. But to force it upon all of humanity, once it's in, it ain't going back. Once you have robots doing everything, once you have AI thinking for you, you were talking about what are you going to do when you do art or music, and I had to chuckle because I was thinking, even today, we're old dinosaurs, so we're used to people knowing how to play an instrument. Kids today, unless they're in a band or something, they think I don't need to learn how to play an instrument because I can tell the computer to play it. And not only will it play it, it'll tell me what the music's going to be. So I don't have to do anything again. I'm not doing anything. Anyhow.
Well, so
I said a lot. I'm sorry.
well, no, I mean, this is what makes this particular topic so difficult to deal with. When we were talking about the economic implications, you know, it was kind of a logical type of discussion. There's just money and supply and demand. There's laws of economics that we could discuss this concept in, but here we're talking about human behavior, and human behavior is one of the toughest things to deal with. And so when people don't feel important, when they don't feel needed, when they feel like they don't have a purpose, they don't have something to contribute, they're not valued by society, this is when human behavior can go off the rails. And so if you're talking about a future where robots are going to do all the work, everything, like you said, will be provided, your food, your shelter, your entertainment, whatever you need, then what is that restless human spirit going to do? Because we're not, like you said earlier, we're not wired, we're not built to be still. We're wired to do things, and that's good. But if you now create a future that's in opposition to that basic human hardwired nature, that's where the problem's going to be. And you brought up, the 100 people maybe implementing this thing. Well, that's the exact same discussion we had last episode about the electric vehicles. Basically, a few hundred people, a few thousand elite people decided electric vehicles were the future to save the planet, and everybody had to comply. And that's the way it was presented, and that's the way it was implemented, and people don't like that at all. And it's crashed and burned, and probably going to be a long time before it ever comes back, if it ever does. So this discussion about morals and ethics is going to, I think, hinge on the same thing. Is it going to be shoved down everybody's throats, or will people have time to adapt to changing the hopefully slowly changing landscape of AI and robotics and all that? And I think that's the danger point, because we're seeing in just a matter of years, AI has gone from being a term that didn't mean anything because it didn't really exist, to now we use it quite commonly on a daily basis, and it's only going to become more pervasive in our daily activities. So, no, I think all of those are good points.
And now on the flip side, I don't know if this might be wishful thinking, but I thought a positive thing of the utopian ideal part of it, which, we've seen so many scary Terminator type movies, it's a little hard to trust that there's not going to be something nefarious or bad people involved in trying to control or rule or whatever, much less the things themselves taking over. So those sorts of things are way again above my pay grade. But a positive thing might be I just wonder this: if everything's taken care of, if, as he said, it wasn't like everybody will have the minimal amount they need to exist, as we do today with people who, when we are taken care of in some way by society or governments or whatever. If everybody's living how he described it was it'll be so profuse and so big and so plentiful, maybe that's a better word, plentiful, that there'll be no want in a way, because everything will be totally taken care of for you in a pleasant way. It's not like you're eking out an existence and you just having the bare necessities met. It made me wonder, is like, well then today what we call the bad guys, the criminals, the people who rob and steal, and the fraudsters, and all the people who try and grift or try and get your identity so they can sell it, and all the bad stuff that we know of today. What would those people do? Would they be still doing bad guy stuff? What would they do? It just popped into my head. So I wondered if it would stop what we call crime and violence. I don't think it would stop violence, because by nature we're moving animals. So unless it does something to neutralize our emotions, people are going to not be well and do bad things.
Really.
Or will robots and AI make those people extinct?
Actually, really, I think the issue there is, will the great new future curb our lusts?
That's a very good,
because lust is the thing that the absolute desire for what somebody else has, what somebody else is doing, what somebody else has accumulated. The lust.
Oh, you mean as in commandment, I don't know which one it is, thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's blah, blah, blah?
Well, yeah. Well,
you want what you don't have?
Well, yeah, and lust is what drives you to pursue it to the exclusion of everything else. It's like if it's a new shiny car, you can't think of anything else until you just go get that shiny car. And unless that kind of human motivation is somehow curbed, then no, I don't think the robbers, the villains, and all that will go away. Anyway, we went
away. We took a long diversion. Sorry, folks.
We've probably beat this one to death, but I think
there's so many questions.
Well, and I think if we've made a point here, I think the point we've made is, unlike talking about economic implications, this one is real. This issue of morals and ethics is really tough to get your arms around, because it's just tough to predict what that future would unleash within the human spirit. Would it be good or would it be bad? And so I'm just going to leave it here where it's hard to predict, and we'll take up the religious and spiritual implications in next episode. Maybe we'll do better there.
Strap in and wear your seatbelts, folks. We're going to go for a ride next week.
But in any case, we want to thank everyone for being here. And until next time, we just hope you're blessed.
And if you have a comment or a question, that'd be great, because it would give us more to talk about. Thank you.
See you next time. Thank you for being with us today. Just remember, God is in control, and we know how the story ends.